Dobar dan, gospe.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. President Milanovic, co-chair of the Brdo-Brioni process, will provide short statements to present today's meeting, and then we will be available for any questions you might have. So we just concluded the 11th summit of presidents within the Brdo-Brioni process. I am happy and grateful to say that the meeting concluded in a successful way. There are two reasons for this. First of all, I think that the discussions that we had were constructive, were polite. We wanted to insist on what unites us, not on what divides us, although we know there are certain things that divide us, but we need to understand where these differences, unsurmountable differences, lie. However, the discussions and the divisions were not that dramatic to hamper us from adopting conclusions. Unfortunately, we were not able to adopt a declaration. During the preparation, we even stopped preparing a draft for the declaration because there were certain issues that divided us. During the conference itself, there were certain common positions that allowed us to adopt conclusions. The presidents of the Brdo-Brioni process gathered at the 11th summit reaffirmed the importance of the enlargement as the most immediate contribution to maintaining peace and stability in our region. More than ever before, the enlargement is a geopolitical issue. Of course, the enlargement of the EU. We are calling to accelerate the integration process in accordance with the known principles and guidelines. We are calling to cancel or to provide a candidate status to Bosnia and Herzegovina by the end of 2022, and we are calling for the cancelling of the visa regime. And we also call on the EU to stand shoulder to shoulder to the Western Balkan countries in tackling the energy and food crisis. What we underscored throughout the meeting, we reaffirm our commitment to dialogue. Dialogue as the only way to overcome any differences and outstanding issues in our relations. Before passing the floor to Zoran, let me say that I have attended all 11 summits, all 11 meetings of presidents. We've had ups and downs. Last year, the conference was very tiring and on the brink of being unsuccessful. But with a touch of wisdom and cautiousness, we were able to bring it to a successful conclusion. When we were preparing for this conference, there were quite a few differences. We saw that the level of trust is not at a high level. Maybe there is even no willingness to come to common positions. But I think that throughout these preparations for this conference, we've realized that maybe it will be difficult to organize this meeting. Maybe there won't be any conclusions, but this would not be a good signal for the Western Balkan countries. And this is why, as we conclude this meeting, I'm grateful that all of us came here to Brdo, that we had an open, polite discussion, respected each other. Yes, there were differences, enormous differences in our views, but we left them aside because we realized that we cannot resolve these differences. We focused on the aspects that we have in common, and this is the final conclusion.
Hvala, Borut. Manj ali več si rekel, more or less you said everything. We came up with conclusions instead of a declaration, which is practically the same. This is the lowest common denominator, but still common, on which we could have reached an agreement. And we were able to do that. I will do everything on my part for Brdo-Brioni process to continue. Mr. President Pahor is finishing his second term by the end of this year, and somebody else will become the president of this country. A woman or a man, but I hope we will continue with the same momentum in this relatively, actually very difficult situation, not just in Europe, but also among members of this initiative. This was a good exercise, but it was not a military exercise, but it was a dialogue exercise in this very dire circumstances globally, in the European Union and in the Western Balkans itself. I am happy with what we have achieved so far. Thank you once again. It was actually your initiative. You have done your job, and we will see how we will continue.
Any questions, please?
Yes.
I'm Leonora Brbatovci from Radio Television of Kosovo. Yes. I'm interested to know further information about the dialogue process between Kosovo and Serbia. Did you discuss about this issue, and have you called on Serbia to recognize Kosovo? Thank you.
The dialogue has been discussed, but nobody has called Serbia and Kosovo to go further, and where is the end of this debate? It's up to them. But you know, in many declarations until this very moment, this year, both countries have been called to go on with the dialogue and try to settle down issues so that you know, peace and stability will be preserved, not just for those two countries, but for the entire region. Okay, this is my comment. It's not in the final declaration. Okay.
Mogu govoriti.
Okay.
Aha. Dobro, dakle hrvatski ću onda govoriti. Ne, o tome nije.
Well, we have not discussed that because this would be way of no return. But I do advocate the recognition of Kosovo by those who have not done yet so, but this was not the occasion to do so. At this moment, it is unrealistic for Serbia to recognize Kosovo. This is the opinion of Vučić and the entire nation.
I don't want to overcomplicate things and say that we did achieve more than we hoped for, but the fact that we came together around the same table, that we were able to listen to each other despite our differences, says that we are all aware that there is no alternative. I'm convinced that wisdom will prevail, wisdom and maturity, because we need to be able to find a solution through dialogue. There is no other way.
This common denominator, my suggestion when we were preparing this conference was to include the constitutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina, of all nations in Bosnia and Herzegovina. For many of us believe that this is the minimum standard, and some in Bosnia and Herzegovina rejected that momentarily, and there is where we left it. However, we did find something in common at the end.
Next one. Who wants the floor?
For Mr. Milanović, have you found the opportunity to discuss with Milanovic about his accusations? No, we haven't. I have said publicly this is not the right approach. When we discuss in these conclusions the well-established criteria and principles, this can be interpreted in many ways, certainly without malice. But for us, in discussions with Serbia, one of the criteria will be also these issues which you just raised. But we have to emphasize that in this moment, the public sentiment in Serbia regarding EU membership is very negative. And in Bosnia, 2-1, as Vučić said today, are against membership in the EU of Serbia. This is 80% of no, and this is certainly a percentage that has to be into account politically. And this is the only so anti-Europe in the region.
Allow me to add that the main role of this platform was the enlargement process, not bilateral relations between Western Balkan countries. We just are calling for a peaceful resolution of disputes. I have a question for both presidents. How realistic are the announcements that the EU might adopt a candidate status for Bosnia and Herzegovina by the end of 2022 and to abolish the visa system, the visa requirements?
I don't know, to be honest. There is certainly a lot of prejudice and reserves of the part of the EU. So these are western part of the EU towards some countries. This is so obvious, it is almost tangible. And there is a possibility of obstructions. Whether this will happen or not, I don't know. But I was it was quite indicative when the EU gave candidate status to Ukraine and not to Bosnia and Herzegovina. And this is completely immoral. I think this is horrible. I said so on many occasions, but if I were a decision maker, I would, on behalf of Croatia, said that I would condition giving candidate status to Ukraine with giving it the same status to Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's also and only a symbolic approach. It shows my position. How come Ukraine is okayed and Bosnia and Herzegovina is not? Such politics is not the right one.
I've always been a politician building on small steps, one at a time. I think that we have to seize any opportunity, even the smallest one, to progress. Before this year's EU summit in July, nobody talked about Bosnia and Herzegovina, and then there was the initiative to grant it a candidate status without conditions. Unfortunately, this didn't go through with a quality majority or with consensus, but the EU, the Council, adopted an important decision. It instructed the European Commission to reassess the situation by the end of this year. I think that all of us here today agree on one thing. The enlargement is a geopolitical issue. Although granting candidate status is a symbolic act, it is also a geopolitical issue par excellence. And I hope that this opinion prevails by the end of this year.
Well, I would like to clarify to myself, not to you. How does this work? Somebody suggests Ukrainian status half a year ago. Then some countries say no way, like Netherlands and Germany. And then there is a political agreement behind the scene, and then the European Commission is required to give a positive opinion, an agreement. And this is actually just a sham. The European Commission, in this case, ad hoc, proposed this crucial question: who will give instructions or tips to the European Commission, and how? This is something we can only guess. This is completely intransparent in these laws. In June this year, it was that we had an opportunity to give a simple and clear political signal, and your President's initiative in this sense was commendable, and they did start certain processes, admittedly, but I have to underline certain things. The European Commission will not produce any expert opinions, because this is not about expertise, but this is about deep political understanding, and this will be agreed with certain players. This should have been done in June.
Gašpar Lube, Al Jazeera Balkans. Gospodine Milanoviću, možete precizirati ovaj...
Can you precise in details explain these problems with the common declaration? Was it a constitutional status of the nations or the constitutional reform? No, I am just talking about the same rights for all the constitution nations. Some are not comfortable with that. Some are allergic to that. All right, legitimately or not, but that's the fact. With a similar problem, I had a similar problems a year and a half ago at a NATO summit in Brussels, not this one in Madrid, the recent one, but for days then I had to threaten to veto the final communique, just to have a mention of the Dayton agreement and constitutionality. Some part of the European Union member states were against it. This just tells you in what circumstances we live. We have to fight for. I would not go into details.
Thank you very much. Thank you.